name is John Hobbs. I'm a church minister, and in these 4 shorts, we're covering 4 things that we as Christians want you to know during this time of coronavirus. Today's the 3rd, and the 3rd is this, that God is for us in all this. God is for us in all this. Now, we've got some rather tough truth to consider. I hope you've watched the first couple of videos. They sort of set up for this one. In recent months, we've had to come to terms, haven't we, with symptoms that persistent dry cough or high temperature. Well, has it ever occurred to you whether the coronavirus itself might be a symptom of something? Last time we saw how we can know that Jesus really was and is the God who's actually there, come to us. The things he did and said proved it. And as God, he speaks to this very issue. You see, at one point, a number of people came up to him, a disaster had happened, and they wanted to know whether those who had died in the disaster had done more wrong than other people. Well, listen to Jesus' answer. It comes from Luke's gospel account of his life. He says, I tell you no, but unless you repent, you too will perish. Now, to repent is to turn from doing what is wrong to God. And Jesus' point was that disaster is, if you like, a symptom that something's gone wrong with our world, that we've turned away from God as the author of life to live for self. If you like, it's his kind warning shot across our bows that unless we change course, well, things won't go well for us. Well, this turning from God is what Jesus called sin. It's seen in our lack of desire to really seek out whether there is a God there and thank him for the good things we enjoy. It's seen as our complacency over what actually pleases him and whether it matters whether we do it. And I have to say, the proof of sin is all around us, isn't it? You know, who can deny the greed that is wrecking the environment our God has gifted to us? Who can deny how cold-hearted we are when it comes to the incredible suffering of the world's poor? Or think about those things that we judge as wrong in others but are quite content with within ourselves. You know, our anger, our hatred, our put-downs and our boasting. And although it's not very culturally sensitive, the brokenness, immense brokenness that has resulted from our embracing of sexual freedom, that's well documented. Our desire to just live as we please, do as we want, it's caused havoc everywhere. Well, look, by definition, to turn from God is rather like unplugging ourselves from our true life support, stubbornly, willfully. And it has huge complications and implications. You see, in response, it's only right, only just for God to give us what we ask for, a world where life is fragile, where disaster and disease and death so dominate. But please, please hear me. God is for us in all this. You see, despite all this, doesn't he still give us so much good? Jesus taught that God is actually outraged by our rejection of him and all that results from it. In fact, sometimes he does bring nations low because of their persistence and the extremity with which they do that. But nevertheless, doesn't God still shower us with so many blessings? And in the trials we face, in such things as the coronavirus, he seeks our attention. Well, C.S. Lewis was an Oxford professor who became a Christian and wrote those famous Narnia books. Well, he also wrote on this subject. Listen to what he says. He says, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. They are God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Well, this is the point that Jesus was making to those who were quizzing him. Remember his words, unless you repent, you too will perish. There's both a wonderful promise there and a very stark warning, isn't there? You know, Jesus warns that if we don't repent of our living without God, then we will perish in the end. He's hinting at what he called hell, a reality beyond death, terrible in the extreme, because it's void of all the good blessings of God we still enjoy in the present. A place where those who are there will have to endure whatever penalty that they deserve for the wrong that they've done. If you like, it's much needed final justice. And I want to be really honest with you here. Jesus, as the Son of God, who proved himself such, he warned that this will be an everlasting punishment, that he will dispense on the day when he will call out every one of us to account for how we've lived our lives. And he was very clear, crystal clear, that this will be the destiny of all who refuse to accept the God who's actually there come to us in Jesus. Now, please see that Jesus speaks in this way so that we might escape this reality, so that we might be rescued from it. Yeah, you see, his words also contain that wonderful promise. If we do change course, if we do repent, then we will not perish. As we saw last time, we will live forever, and we will live forever because God is ready to forgive, ready to totally forgive all who turn to him in Jesus. And this was made possible by Jesus' own death, crucifixion from the Romans, in which he taught he was somehow paying off the penalty that we deserve for our wrongdoing so that we might not have to face it. Well, look, much more could be said, and all with real sympathy for the sufferings we have to endure in this life. But we do need to grasp the God who's actually there. He's not like a 21st century intellectual or a G me up life coach. He's the creator of the universe. And so he's a being of awesome power, of unfathomable and faultless wisdom, and unsettling goodness, not least in how he's provoked at the bad things that we do. He's a being who will always be beyond our full comprehension, but is somehow at work even in the hardships of life, giving us a little taste of what life without him would be like beyond death. And doing that so that we might seek him. We might realise our need, our desperate need of him. And guys, when we recognise that our lives extend on into the forever of eternity, isn't such a sort of extreme measure actually quite necessary? Sin is the ultimate pandemic. It's universal, it's fatal, and we've infected ourselves with it. It's seen in all the wrong of the world around us, yet still so many of us refuse to accept that we are sick with it. No amount of money or education or medical intervention can deal with this, but God can. And wonderfully, he is for us. He really is willing to forgive us, to accept us, to be a perfect Father to us and bring us to a truly glorious, everlasting life in this world, but made perfect beyond death, where we would live with him and with all his people forever. If only we will repent, if only we will change course and turn from our sin and wrongdoing to Jesus for this forgiveness and this life that only he can give. Well, thank you for listening. Do share with any you feel would benefit from this. Do click on the link below and have a read of my book, which just gives a little bit more. But above all, be reassured, God is for us in all this. So let's be those who choose to change course so that we would be for him.